Hello, good morning, everyone. Thank you joining me and everyone with Tibetan Buddhist Society of Canberra. We are doing the Sunday morning meditation, followed by this morning Q&A. So please, if you have any questions, please type them up in the chat box at the end of meditation. So with this in mind, please bring yourself in good space physically and mostly good meditative posture and a good intention, and most importantly good discipline to sit still and develop calm, abiding, one-pointed meditative concentration. So we will do firstly the prayers, refuge and four immeasurables by way of developing, renew our refuge in the triple gem. Hello everyone. I can see Donald and Sylvia, and hello Kathy and Carol and Greg and Pirangela. There's a few people I can tell. Hello, nice to see you all. Thank you very much. So we will do the refuge. Please join your hands at the heart and pay our respect to the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha, and then create the right motivation to do the meditation. Thank you very much. Oyenda Buddha Dharma Sangha Aitere Vete Ladam Bhavacha Ajehandala Ajare Vadavaja and Abu Dharma Sangha Aitere Vete Ladam Bhavacha Ajehandala Ajare Vadavaja and Abu Dharma Sangha Aitere Vete Ladam Bhavaja Ajehandala Ajare Vadavaja. May all beings have happiness and cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering and a cause of suffering. May they know a powerful happiness that knows no suffering. May they dwell in equanimity, free from attachment, aversion, though never. May all beings have happiness and cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering and a cause of suffering. May they know a powerful happiness that knows no suffering. May they dwell in equanimity, free from attachment, aversion, though never. May all beings have happiness and cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering and a cause of suffering. May they know a powerful happiness that knows no suffering. May they dwell in equanimity, free from attachment, aversion, though never. So now we'll do the calm abiding meditation. We will do three lots of 10 minutes. I will use the bell to gong. So during this you try to stay very present in your object of meditation. During the first 10 minutes I suggest you sit on the correct focus on the posture and stay still, but still keep the body not passive but actively sitting in a correct posture, and take time to adjust when necessary. Otherwise, try to keep your attention on the very posture. You remember Buddha sat still and then only attain enlightenment. And as I said, the very posture itself will, guarding the posture itself will bring many, many meditative realizations. So that's the first 10 minutes. During the second, try to use the breath, the forward counting of qualified rounds of breathing. You just watch the incoming breath, use the breath to focus your attention, know what you're inhaling, see and feel the inhalation while you're inhaling. Likewise, when you're retaining, do the retaining, know and see and feel the retention. And then exhale. And then the count as one. So we'll do that the second 10 minutes again, and many rounds. If you can keep the count and without losing the count, that will boost your concentration. If you lose the count, take a mini break and start again. It's most likely you can keep counting, really useful to know that you are focused. And then we will third 10 minutes after the gong, we'll do the reverse counting. Reverse counting means if you reach up to 40 or 10 or 20 or whatever number you reach, about 50, 60 is easily done if you're very good concentration in 10 minutes. This is my experience. And so reverse counting from 50, for instance, and then if possible do the super qualified reverse counting and count backwards and to boost your attention. So have this kind of system and discipline in place and keep the mind very serene, keep the intention very sincere, and keep the posture very still, and use the technique, all these three techniques, very simple. Okay, so let's do that. Okay, everyone. So please, today is a question answer. So if it will help if you would type your question. Those on Zoom. If there are any on Facebook putting questions, we'll also be able to reply. Only if I have access to my phone, which I don't. Maybe I can ask Anthony to get my phone from my office. Thank you. Yeah. So there's. Can you comment on the connection of all things that we encounter in our thoughts? Oh yes. There's called. This is from Greg. Thank you for the question. If you guys can't see, the question is, can you comment on the connection of all things that we encounter in our thoughts? Yes. It is said that all connection has three connections: the outer connection, the inner connection, and secret connection. So usually our thoughts have external object that if you can tell whether it's something to do with someone or something out there, or then that's obviously outer connection. And you might have some experience, you might have some memory, might have some opinion about it. So that's outer connection. Then inner connections are some inner mental experiences, thoughts that come out of nowhere, but nevertheless they appear. So, because all thoughts are dependent on the actual five aggregates. When we have the consciousness itself is conscious of the thoughts, and so when it is able to see its own thoughts, so that's a inner connection that you are able to see it's your thought. But often when we know it's our thought, then we know it doesn't have to be things out there. It is our thought only. So therefore, we have multitude of things about which, from matter to consciousness, we could bring consciously in our thoughts, or unconsciously they just get crash. Some obviously have I would call deposits of memories or habits, feelings, emotions for or against it. The more we have those unresolved or undetached feelings for or against, they seem to reappear whenever we seem to be vacant, so to speak. But if we are very focused, for instance, when you're breathing, when you're meditating, the connection is only with one pointedly. If you're one pointedly focusing, all that encounters in the thought is our choosing. So we can basically select. We can be very selective to what we think. And when we realize that it's not so much the external things, what I choose to think. You can even fine-tune among those things. And then say, if you think about your own sort of feelings about something, you realize it's too judgmental about it, or to be too harsh on yourself. You can therefore eliminate those so unfair thoughts about yourselves, and you can maybe more generously think more gently to about the thought by yourself. You can see everything we encounter is basically be self-cognizable. When we cognize that are our thoughts, we can eliminate thoughts. So there are no real connections that are indispensable. We can disconnect them, we can drop them, and we can renounce them. So all connections are that we make in our thoughts are dependent origination. There's nothing that is truly independently there. So if we try to deliberately develop positive thoughts or emotion for something, then we have to connect with all the right storyline or right generous thoughts about that, and then we will arouse all the positive thoughts and emotions. So you can see we need to have some kind of propensities in our conscious alaya consciousness, where we can tap in, and then as soon as you remember someone's kindness to you, then straight away, because he's been so kind, I will do this, I don't mind what he does. So we straight away develop the positive stocks, positive sort of deposits of thoughts. And when it comes to someone we don't know at all, then all of a sudden we don't know how to connect the person. We are lost, We don't even have the name for the person, so we have no connection. There's all of a sudden there's no connection, but there is a connection that is begging for you to make something out of nothing. So that shows how much of them are propensities that are thought in the past have been deposited, what they call deposits of thoughts, and so, say when you have heard a lot of the qualities of the Buddha and his wisdom, his compassion, his far-sighted vision, and the more you're, then when you connect with those things, when you take refuge, you will have this surge of incredible feeling of devotion that instills, and all of a sudden you can spin yourself in that kind of inspired mood, because you have past connection of hearing and reading about the Buddha's qualities, and therefore your mind is ready to tune in that state as quickly as possible. So that shows how our knowledge, our past connection, reading, hearing, listening, thinking about the Buddha, that's the past, what we call outer interdependent origination connections, and knowledge interdependent connections. And when we now instigate today is today is Sunday, we are meditating, let's think about the qualities of Buddha. Instead of thinking of this or that I can't relate today, I want to think of the moment you choose and select and sift through the thoughts, you straight away will make this encounter with incredible, encounter with all of a sudden the renewal of your faith and devotion in the Buddha. And so that shows that all the thoughts that we encounter are selectable, and we can pick and choose, and we need to have the cognition whether this encounter with these particular thoughts about that object is necessary, I need to deepen in, or saying that I don't need to think about these things, this is way too negative. You can actually, the more conscious you are, the more the connections are pliantly ready to be changed. So there is no connection that is always fixed and real and permanent, and so on. So that's why it's the more conscious we are of all the things, because all things are conditioned, and our mind is the primary conditioner. And the more we are able to see the our thoughts are either desire instigated or faith instigated or curiosity instigated or deep interest so you can see what kind of inlaid kind of propensities that we have, the inner connections of dependent arising and the outer connection dependent arising plus secret connection dependent arisings. Some just we don't have any history or even conscious, but it's all of a sudden your mind could be unknown causes, but your thoughts and feeling could be somewhere. So that's why in being able to see our own thoughts and not become attached to some and not becoming aversive to another, and let them come and let them go, because you're not really trying to reconnect with some thoughts or try to cultivate new ones. If you set in that indifferent state of meditative concentration, you can see there's no real connection with which you should attach to or aversive to or indifferent. You just simply let yourself be like a street. It doesn't mind which car goes right, which car goes left, you are just a road, So wish we could become just like a road, which doesn't have any particular connection with any vehicle, So so meditators should be like the road, not impartial to any vehicle going this way or that way, and not get attached to anything. Just simply be the road that is just simply be there for all. So yeah, so that might do for your question. Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Greg, for that question. And yes, okay, Kathy's question is, when becoming more aware of emptiness, self-compassion for sentient beings seems to increase. Could you please speak about why this happens? Yeah, of course, we realize the more empty or more meaningful we become. It's not so much empty, but when we become more meaningfully aware of our lack of the use of selfishness, and then we empty our selfish concern, then we are able to have more compassion for those who do not have the sighting for this kind of awareness. And we realize that the emptiness is such a penetrative teaching that it cuts through the veil of self and its confusion in grasping to self is the true origin of sufferings. And so when you realize the trueness, how true that teaching is, of course, then you are empty of your own sorrow. Then you are free to feel the sorrow of others and their causes stemming from that grasping to the self. And that is really the real compassion. Compassion with no set object as one particular sentient being. So there's objectless compassion. But while sentient beings in general is your object of compassion, but you feel for all, no matter who they are, because they are all in the same situation and not being able to stay in that clear, vast, useful state of mind. When you are able to, in the emptiness state of mind, then you're not attached to this, or you're not ignorant of that, you're not aversive to this. Because of that, you can empty your mind of all, and that yet most people are completely chock-a-block with so much thoughts, traffic of thoughts. And they do not know how to empty even one thought, let alone this thought or that thought. So they are completely choking by grasping to me and mine and their everything. So they don't know how to see the true origin of suffering is self-grasping, and they do not see the true origin of happiness is selflessness, and so they are all blinded. And when you see how vulnerable sentient beings are, then we have more readily available compassion. Our compassion is directed. Its compassion is always, because they say that one who is in the meditation emptiness is the compassion with essence. So then the compassion has some essence. If those people who have compassion but not understand emptiness, they themselves become overwhelmed by the sufferings of sentient beings. This compassion that overwhelms you, makes you teary, makes you very shaky, is not compassion with essence of emptiness. So when you understand and realize emptiness and then develop compassion, then you have compassion with essence. Compassion with essence is the realization of emptiness of self, and therefore also emptiness of sentient being, who we do not have a great ability to remedy their sufferings, because their suffering itself and sentient being themselves do not exist from our own meditation and emptiness. So it doesn't really overwhelm us or tire us or exhaust us. Actually, it liberates us because you don't have to take the role of rescuer, the rescuer thing. Now I have compassion, I can rescue, oh, look at me, how much compassion I have, type of feeling. That kind of thing can be a premature compassion without essence. Compassion with essence there is almost a lack of object for or against with which your compassion is. Your compassion is a continuous habit of you, because all children, like sentient beings, are languishing in sorrow, and for not knowing the cause of sorrow is selfishness, and that is blinding them, disabling them. And when you have this deep understanding, of course, it's your outer characteristic with sentient beings, like the lotus in the mud. You're more beautiful. The lotus is more beautiful when it is in the mud, and the lotus is nothing very special if it's floating in the space, and it's almost considered to be non-existent, and it is non-existent. The lotus in the mud and water is that while with a suffering sentient being like mud, your ability to I would say feel compassion with essence will have reasonable range of benefit to the immediate sentient beings, but at the same time it doesn't really soil yourself by becoming very traumatized or sad or depressed by suffering of sentient beings. While there are bodhisattvas who are crying always, but they are always crying bodhisattvas because in the eyes of the ordinary sentient being, the bodhisattva have to be like the flower that is stuck in the mud. So while the flower seems to be not soiled by the mud, but the root of it stuck in the mud. So we will have to have some teariness, I suppose, in working with fellow sentient beings. We are not cold stone like bodhisattvas. well, it's sometimes better to be a cold stone bodhisattva than a fluffy flower that dissolves very quickly. So it is very, very good sign that more readily we are compassionate. That means we have some degree of understanding of emptiness. Therefore, our response to suffering sentient beings is one of non-judgment, non-reaction, not impatient, and not reactive, but still radiant compassion. That these sentient beings are best response for a bodhisattva to sentient being is compassion. Best offering to the Buddhas is sentient being practicing compassion to another sentient being. Even the Buddhas will be more pleased that sentient beings are practicing kindness to each other, rather than judgment, rather than negativity, criticism, reaction, overreaction. That's a really show of one who lacks compassion, one who has a lot of grasping to the sentient being, expectation and unrealistic expectation of other then makes themselves uncompassionate. And then they say and do things that are completely harms the sentient being rather than reduce the suffering of sentient beings. So if we are compassionate, we should be affecting to reduce the suffering of sentient beings. While we might feel empathy and compassion, but how do we know it's reducing the suffering of other beings? So reduction of suffering of sentient beings has to be patience, generosity. So if we feel compassion, but we need to have an action of compassion, that action of compassion has an actual immediate cause of relieving the suffering of somebody. Otherwise, we feel compassion. We know it's compassion, but to the person, we don't know it is doing any help because we are not doing anything we are not leaving our comfort zone to do anything to relieve their sufferings. So that's why most of the compassion meditation we do are just training for ourselves to be able to be useful to relieve sufferings of sentient beings. While we are not angry or upset, agitated, it's bad, it's good, but what does it mean that we are full with compassion? How many finite numbers of sentient beings suffering has been relieved by us? If not, it's not compassion. Compassion, by definition, is not just feeling suffering of others, but actually relieving of the sufferings of others. But what did we do to actually relieve the sufferings of others? So in meditation or training, we could feel this pouring compassion in us, but immediately we are not doing anything to relieve the suffering. So sometimes there is that kind of inactive compassion, passive compassion we feel, but when it comes to actually delivering act of compassion, we often seem to fall short of having anything that's relevantly able to reduce sufferings of others. So that shows that compassion does need to be tested in actually delivering to finite sentient beings and relieving their sufferings. And during that, not only we have to practice engage bodhisattva's way of life, or patience, or generosity, or whatever, but also we have to have the kind of wisdom, not attached to the result of our relieving of suffering. We really want to see some suffering relieved, but deep down we know that we cannot really relieve anybody's suffering. Why? Because Buddha said, I do not relieve anybody's suffering with my own hand. Then can we do anything to relieve suffering? We are only facilitating sentient beings to relieve their suffering, but we shouldn't be seen ourselves as a rescuer of sentient beings' suffering. So that's why, having said that we should relieve sentient beings' suffering, it doesn't mean that we should be the one who is actually become the rescuer and messiah, but rather we become the kind of a conduit for the other to be able to relieve their own suffering, and they're empowering them to do that. So therefore, highest way to show compassion is make them have Dharma, make them to hear and know the realized Dharma, and then you can see time after time how those sentient beings are no longer oohing and ahhing and moaning and groaning or reacting childishly anymore, but they actually are practicing compassion to each other, tolerance to each other. When you see them doing that, then of course you can see how their suffering has been reduced by the teachings. Otherwise it will be just on the day you give something to somebody, they have a smile on their face, but then what? Then after that they're just miserable next day. But once you have empowered them the true Dharma, then they themselves will be able to adequately use that app, so to speak, and then always be free of suffering and their causes of suffering, because they know how to undo it. So you can see that our feeling of compassion, while we realize emptiness, is useful, but it's even better if we can influence somebody to realize this, so that they themselves are able to be free from suffering and cause of suffering in their thoughts and words and deeds and thereafter. So you can see how important it is for the Dharma to be readily taught and understood. That is the highest compassion we can practice. Please feel free to tap any questions, Facebook, as well as everyone who is here.
Carol.
Oh, yes, please, Carol, go ahead.
I often think, Rinpoche, about how the Buddha said, with our thoughts we make the world. And I often think about how the 8 worldly dharmas of gain, loss, pleasure, pain, praise, blame, fame, and disgrace, in that respect, actually make the world, because we're all caught up in the 8 worldly dharmas, and yet they are just concepts, and concepts are just thoughts.
Yeah. All 8 worldly concerns. We wouldn't be worldly if we are not. We don't have those concerns. But the question is whether we are able to renounce those worldly concerns. And so, if we are able to become detached from those worldly concerns, every now and then we do. We realize, oh, I'm too attached to praise and can't tolerate blame, and this is no good. But then, when somebody does praise, we still prefer that rather than someone blaming us. so, so, so that's why, yeah, we could not. We are creating. We are creator of our own world because we could not uh, be free from those worldly concerns. And unless you reach certain heights of meditation, where the practitioner actually have detached from the world and also his world of his thoughts, and therefore go deep into solitary meditation, where he no longer is needing others to praise or because he's no need of seeking praise, nor does he cause anyone to blame. And so whatever physical or mental pain or pleasure he goes through, he also sees them as a transient things. Therefore, he doesn't deliberately try to choose one and reject the another, because as long as his aggregates are his deluded aggregates are in the mortal body, and one is not free from mortality of the body, he knows that he will still suffer. But then when he becomes detached to the body as me or mine, then even the pain from sitting or from hunger, feeling thirsty, all of those things does not create aversion to him, because he doesn't have the selfishness. He goes in a deep meditative state whereby pain of the body or pleasure or the seeking mind has almost discarded from the deep meditative state. So even those without worldly concern do create a world, what we call transcendental world, if you like, is a transcendental state of mind. So even the enlightened state is a state of mind's creation. It may not have the worldly concern, but it has the state that doesn't feel pain or pleasure. So it is completely transcend the humanness of it. So even the enlightened beings are those who don't have the worldly concerns. They are abiding. They call it those who have transcended eight worldly concerns, reaches the eight states of the arhathood. And so the arhathood is also a state of the mind of the practitioner, and who no longer is dependent on the external people praising and blaming, but he still prefers to be in that state of transcendental, sorrowless state of the mind that has entered the stream, or once return and non-return. All of these eight abiding states, like eight abiding states of the meditation, is sign of the transcendence of the eight worldly concerns. And so even the freedom from the eight worldly concerns is still a state of mind. So that state, saying of the Buddha that we create our own world, is relatable not only in a worldly sense but also beyond the world. The meditative trance state of the arhats are also a state of mind that is creation of the practitioner's progress, and progress of his or her reaching those arhat state are also a result of his own mental effort. So that's that. We have another question. When thinking in meditation, when consciousness takes on the stream on its own, like dreaming, what is this consciousness? Is this the same as dreaming? Well, when we are experiencing the withdrawal of operative sense consciousness from the world of sight and sound, and so when the mind has withdrawn, but there is still not a feeling of actual thinking as in dullness, but the absence of interactiveness of the external world. The mind is thereby conscious of the consciousness, but not of the sight, sound, smell, taste, and therefore it looks like a semi dream, because it is not readily available state the mind can be, because usually our mind is always interacting and operatively with sense objects. And so when your meditation takes you, and that kind of a stream, if you can enter into that stream, of course it is not dream. Dream is influenced by sleep, and consciousness free of conditioned experience of the five sensory world, but still have this kind of a experience that is sharply contrast from the everyday world, is kind of a eve of meditative realization, of being able to see that how the mind can become so lucid of its own lucidity, but then that lucidity of the mind knows that it is not dream. It knows that it is the nature of the mind. When you see the lucidity of the mind, then you know it is the nature of the mind, and therefore the mind that has this lucidity is actually empty. And therefore there is no resident self in that unbounded, I would say, lucency of your mind, and there is nothing but that lucidity. This is mind-only experience of meditation, that as if that is the only thing that is true. And so mind-only is not just a dry philosophical assertion, but it actually is a genuine meditative realization that when you become so stripped off from everything of the outer world, your mind actually does experience its own lucidity and speechlessness of it, but it sees the spectacle clarity of the mind that actually it thinks it is real, you know. So this the mind only is not just the only is really not correct, you know. It's just that everything is mind. You know, it's not just mind only, but this everything is mind, except that everything has been dissolved, and everything has been lucidly made clear as no different from that state of mind. So I suppose if your meditation is very good, and if you're not falling into the kind of a subtle dullness, this lightness and lucency of your subjective mind's experience is very, very, very scintillating to make you feel as this is incredible. I'm able to reach that state, and that's exactly what the trance of good meditation does entice practitioner to go into that state. By doing meditation, prayers, and devotion, whatever. Even when we do the sadhanas, we try to pause in the middle of the sadhana. You create all this emotion of feeling of devotion and faith and compassion, taking refuge. But once you dissolve the refuge object in you, you try to nullify the dichotomy of self, who's meditator, object to the object meditation. All are absent, but there's incredible inseparability or inexpressibility of that oneness, of this luminosity or clarity. And we always try to peak our meditation by doing various practices. We try to enter into that. So this kind of, you may call it sinking, but actually almost like elapsing. You know, you're crossing over the path. You when you have crossed over the path, you don't see those then this side, because so you're sinking in. Sun has gone the other side of the mountain. Likewise, your self has gone sunken into a state that is beyond words, and nevertheless, our mind actually experiences that. Even when we sleep, that's exactly when we sleep. All our six sensory consciousness, operative, visual, auditory consciousness has closed, deliberately shut down, and then the experience the sleeping person has, whether it's dreaming or not, is that kind of pool of indescribable consciousness. During that, you actually have no suffering. You are not creating any suffering. You are not desiring anything. Your mind is completely go over the past, if you like, and therefore sleep is very peaceful. Sleep is like a stream of consciousness that is devoid of dream, but nevertheless what we call dharmakaya. And sleep is very beautiful. Not only is it restful for the body, but actually it is very good example of meditation on dharma dhatu, or sphere of reality, that we deliberately try to peak our mind into that state. Whether use of prayer or mantra, sometimes people who practice, they take the practice in more outer format, how many they can recite, how good the visualization is. But those are just the means in themselves, the means to reach that state of equilibrium. And so while it's inexpressible, it may be like a dream. Yeah, you can experience it, but during the dream you don't know it's a dream. You think it's real. But most people in the meditative, they become attached to those flavor of samadhi as more understandably. It's good to have some signs of result of your practice, but then as soon as you have them, you lose them because you get attached to them. But if you do not get attached to them and let the mind become even more detached, and if should the experience do not continue and have exactly opposite, you back to square one, even then you let the mind be in that pool of clarity. So actually you are victory of occurrence, they call it, letting the occurrence be without putting value to this experience and without grasping to another. So the mind can definitely, becomes very much, I can use this terminology called, for the beginners, they have appearance become enemy after meditating a while. For a good practitioner, the emptiness become the enemy because they can't handle the emptiness. They can't stand everything being empty, even though it is the best thing can happen. But they really find dumbfounded. But when you say all appearance are your thoughts, then you have your all appearance become your enemy. And then later on, when you empty all the appearance, then emptiness becomes your enemy. Why? Because there is this grasper. The person who is grasping to his or her meditative experience is creating the very obstacle. He shouldn't grasp to any, because they are neither is this real nor is that unreal. Both are mutually inclusive. So when we are able to have such a subjective, they call king of recognition. King of recognition in meditation is that what you recognize is not itself. You just, whatever, as soon as you see your thoughts or your distractions, knowing that they are distraction, or knowing they are realization, what is the difference? Both are equally recognition, both are equal, but not getting attached to the realization and not becoming aversive to the distractive thought is the real experience. And we are not able to nullify the duality that we often usually put value to our experiences. Why? Because we don't have sufficient right understanding of the right view of emptiness of experience, emptiness of phenomena. We talk of emptiness itself, but we still attach to emptiness to the flavor of meditation. So we attach to phenomena of experience. And we are aversive to phenomena of distraction. So when neither the distraction, when distraction is transformed into recognition of the awareness, then the distraction becomes just as useful as the meditation itself. But most people's level of understanding of the view is not good enough to see the recognition is the king of realizations. Be that distraction, that is also empty of true existence, or realization, that is also empty of true existence. But usually we become attached to realization, thinking that is real. Then it's like nirvana is the real. I really need this. Oh, that's great. And then that's why we don't have ultimate bodhicitta. When we don't have ultimate bodhicitta, we get attached to the flavor of samadhi, be that nirvana or samadhi or jhana or whatever it is. Of course, for majority people who haven't got any of the samadhi or experience, to have a little bit of something to become puffed up is good. But then it's really important that even that you shouldn't get attached to. Of course, that is not majority of people's problem. Majority of people don't even get to sit down on the cushion long enough to go beyond their worldly concerns. Mm. Okay, we have one more time for one more question. Please feel free. I haven't known how to interact with Facebook audience, so nothing's coming from Facebook. People just passively watching and listening, I suppose. Maybe they're afraid to ask anything because they're attached. But it's good.
Rinpoche, I don't want to hog, but I don't want no one to ask any questions. And what you said about the consciousness in meditation, I wondered, could you say what is thinking then and what is agitation?
Well, thinking and agitation are more technical problems in not having your mind consciously staying on the fixed object of meditation. And then when the mind is sinking in some kind of dullness and tiredness, sleepiness, or just heaviness of the body, no clarity, subjective operative consciousness, no objective operative consciousness, not really connecting with the object. So it's having a thinking, but you don't really know you're thinking. So you're not conscious you're thinking, nor are you aware that you are agitating when you're agitating. So, but if you're aware that you are thinking when you're thinking, that's not thinking. That is consciousness. And when you're aware that you are agitating when you're agitating, and then being able to see the agitation and not becoming troubled by the agitation, but woken up by that awareness, that is consciousness. So what I was saying earlier before is that its recognition of dullness as dullness is not dullness. Maybe there was a kind of a phase where one wasn't aware that I was dull and you was actually thinking. Maybe the body was losing the position and the mind was withdrawn. The person was not subjectively aware of the object, let alone the thinking. So that's the thinking, you're not aware that you're thinking. But as soon as you become aware that I'm thinking, I was thinking, and then, so recognition of the thinking as thinking, but not so much averse to the thinking, but becoming just as aware as if you are with the object of meditation. Only thing is you're you're more aware with the thinking thought, and therefore you're not thinking. So it's actually awareness of thinking is not thinking. They say when you know you are distracted, you are not distracted. You have actually found where you are. Maybe you're not sitting on the breath, or you're losing the count, or you are not with the object meditation. But when you know that you're lost, you're not lost. You are found. So our consciousness becomes somewhat less aware that knowing you are distracted. For beginners, they think they should have meditation without any distraction. But experienced meditator knows that the object of meditation is not so much for you to see the object, but to see the mind that is trying to focus. If mind is losing the focus, it's the object is helping you to see the mind. The point is not so much to see the object so much, but actually to see the mind itself. But we often think that seeing the object is the primary purpose, and anything that comes on the way, it is a distraction. No, sighting the distraction instead of object may seem like a distracting, but the distraction is recognition of the distraction is the first experience of the meditator. But inexperienced people in meditation may say, "I can't meditate. I get distracted." They haven't actually sat long enough to know that it is actually in the awareness of distraction that you have the sum of the clearest mind. Before you were distracted, you thought you were meditating, weren't you? But you were drifting all over the place. You didn't even know you were distracted. So by the time you actually recognize that you are distracted, is the sharpest kind of awareness that mind is. So the consciousness is not drownable in water. It cannot be burned in fire. Your dullness and not being aware of dullness is because of the physicality of our body. Our mind become so unaware of the dullness, so we become so deluded that we are not aware that we are dull when we're dull. But if you are aware that you are thinking, then you are actually not the gross dullness. It's not gross dullness. Gross dullness doesn't know it's dull. Subtle dullness enables you to know the distinction between gross dullness and subtle dullness. And gross dullness has a certain kind of physical and external behavior of weather or food, or all of these things can contribute to the gross dullness. But subtle dullness is not an external thing you need to adjudicate, but rather that you become so absorbed in some kind of withdrawal that the mind has sunken in some kind of a state that is not really conscious, but nor is it meditation, but nor is it sleep. So there is some kind of, we call them Chingwa Chenpo Tang in Tibetan, the precipice of the great dullness. We have fallen into the precipice of the great dullness, and it looks like semi-meditation. And the person didn't know time or whatever. He's basically a kind of sleep, but he doesn't even know he's sleeping. So these things happen when you try to stay awake. It's very easy to occur that you go fall asleep. So the meditation is about becoming waking up, not only from the sleep, but waking up from daytime's deluded consciousness. Even when we awake physically, we are not sleeping, but we're still sleeping. We're still sleeping, falling asleep to me, my, I, poor me, and my health, my future, my sickness. We are always thinking like this. So we are basically really, really dull in that state. Even though outwardly we're doing few things, maybe even doing formal practices, but deep down still one is so full of me. So that's the dullness. So when you have this amazing kind of realization of the futility of me and mine, let alone the body and feelings and people and do ups and downs, not really. One is so cognizant of the futility of those things. That's when you are not really dull. So you don't have to be sitting. You could be mowing the lawn. You could be riding a bike, but you still could be a mind that is free of all of that. So it doesn't. So the wakefulness of the mind doesn't have to be always sitting in the meditation. It could be while doing various other things. Your mind is still not doing dullness. Dullness to do with this desire, craving, and aversion and ignorance. You're not doing any of these deluded consciousness because you don't have any impure perceptions. When you don't have deluded consciousness, you don't have any impure perception. You have experiential perceptions because you are doing the practice. When you're doing the practice, outwardly, whatever you're doing is a kind of conventional thing, but deep down your mind is well above it. Because you're not doing deluded consciousness, you're doing probably yogic experience, meditation, and maybe even pure perception. So these are all possible within the range of the consciousness. Okay, everyone, thank you. So that's all we have time for. Thank you for your questions, and nice to see you all. Any last questions before I close? If you have, please do.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm so sorry. I did put a question through on the Facebook group a little while ago, but it didn't come through, so I'm just coming through Zoom. Sorry this was late, and I hope it's not too difficult for the last question. Rinpoche, just when you were talking about emptiness, my question is that if everything is ultimately this emptiness and this luminosity, then that means that everything must ultimately be the same. And if that is true, then what is the difference between, say, the triple gem and a stone? Because they're both luminous emptiness. How do they actually differ in the ultimate reality?
They don't. In ultimate reality, there is no difference between a stone and a triple gem. This is called non-differentiation of everything. But that's the ultimate level. An ultimate level is only within the domain of the mind of an enlightened one. And while we can intellectually talk about ultimate level, and that's because we are grappling with the relative reality, but on ultimate level, yeah, there is no problem. But it is in the relative level that we are not able to see the emptiness of anything, and so because we are not able to see the emptiness of everything, we think the realness of everything. Because of that, our mind is not able to empty our thoughts or values or attachments and aversions. We are not able to we are not able to retreat any of those thoughts. We are repeatedly depositing those deluded thoughts, and so we are not able to realize the emptiness of it. We don't realize how conditioned the stone is. We don't realize the stone is rammed particles, and many particles are solidified, and otherwise they are sand particles. So there is no really stone in the stone if you know how to pulverize them. Whether you have to pulverize physically or whether you pulverize with wisdom. So if you can see the space between the particles and the emptiness of of the stone, because there is no really stone in the stone. The stone is a mere figment of our imagination and relative label, but otherwise there's no stone in the stone. There's no stone in the stone. There's no stone to the stone either. There's no stone to the beings other than who has conceptualized and labeled the stone. Those who do not know the stone, for them it might be where they're sitting on. They don't. Maybe a butterfly sitting, landing on a stone. Don't think I want to sit on this stone. I don't think there's a stone for the butterfly. Well, we have to ask them. So stone is only us, that you and us in this world. We have labeled. The stone is merely labeled. On a relative level, even in a relative level, Morgan, is there is a correct relative and incorrect relative. So mostly we're dealing with incorrect relative. We don't even realize the even relatively the you can't drink the mirage, for instance. That's incorrect relative truth. But you can drink water. Water is correct relative truth. But how much water can you drink? Because water is not truly cause of quenching thirst. See whether you can drink 2 buckets or 1 cup. If it's 1 cup, it quenches thirst. But 2 buckets, it might drown you. So what is water, This how much is quencher of thirst, how much is cause of your drowning, So there is no true water that drowns or quenches anybody. It's only relative to the amount. So emptiness is emptiness is a dependent origination. Emptiness is not empty of things. It's empty of independent. Empty of independent stone. Empty of independent stone, and of course empty of independent Buddha as well, Buddha triple gem is only there that people like us who are struggling in samsara, we have to be introduced relatively to the correct relative truth of triple gem, So we arouse devotion, fear of samsara, faith in the qualities, compassion for sentient beings, and therefore we have to create a triple gem. And they are gem of a gem, They're very hard to find gem because your mind wouldn't pay attention to find the gems, And these gems you couldn't buy in shops, And these gems you have to find in your fumbling in the garbage of your mind, and all of us I realize how true the Dharma is. And that's very few can pay heed to it and hear it and get it. It is a very rare gem. And even that is relative truth. But until we realize ultimate truth, and there is a correct relative truth, and and the stone is also correct relative truth, but will be proven to be incorrect relative truth. Because even stone is not stone from the stone. Okay, thank you very much, everyone, for your questions and for your attention and the company. Thank you very much. We'll do the short dedication of merits. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Abada mere me ovaga da deva me zage homnes me ale bere do be from ojana pada odesene de erenda maya na de Oda mere ra hagra me ho be gaz de la Manju Shrenyo Hazama Draba Drajelawa Follow Ode Hezambo Aja de Ode Mere Mede Hezalembo Digida Tebe Vedana Yedaza where has been bombarding freely the generation. Thank you. Hello, Donald.
Hi, Rinpoche.
How are you? Nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. Yes.
Fine. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. Yes.
Nice to see you too.
That's good. Thank you.
Thank you, Rinpoche.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Rinpoche.
Thank you. Take care. Bye bye.
Thank you, Rinpoche.
Thank you.
Should we go?
Yes, go back.
Lunch.
Lunch.
Bye, Rinpoche. Thank you very much.